Welcome to Pink Blade. Here, we don't just watch stories, we step inside them. Today, we're diving deep into one chapter only.
And what a chapter. I mean, it's less of a story and more of a crime scene, really.
It really is. We are looking exclusively at Bridgerton, Season 1, Episode 7, Oceans Apart.
Mm-hmm.
And, normally when you talk about Bridgerton, the conversation tends to drift. It goes to the costumes, the romance.
The steaminess.
The steaminess, exactly. But today, our mission is a little different. We are, I think, performing an autopsy on a marriage that has completely flatlined.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, we're examining this society that is just dealing with the radioactive fallout of a huge scandal.
Right. And to be clear, this isn't going to be a recap. If you're here with us, we're assuming you know the basics. You know Daphne and Simon are miserable.
Yes.
What we want to do is uncover how the show tells us they're miserable, how it uses sound, how it uses the blocking of the actors, and how it kind of brutally deconstructs the entire romance genre.
It's such a jarring pivot
Yeah.
from what came before. I mean, honestly, we spent 6 episodes in what I can only call the art of the swoon.
Right.
We had the courtship, we had the duel, the confession, that honeymoon montage, which was, let's call it energetic.
Energetic is a very diplomatic way of putting it. It was a pure fantasy.
It was. But then Oceans Apart opened, and it feels like someone just flipped on the lights in a nightclub at 3 in the morning.
The party is absolutely over.
The hangover is here.
And that's exactly what this episode is meant to be. Structurally, in a limited series, episode 7 is almost always the all is lost moment. It's the point where you have to strip away all the artifice.
Right.
And Bridgerton does this so viscerally, and it does it in the very first scene. And there isn't even any dialogue. It just starts with noise.
The Battle of the Hobbies. I really want to drill down into this opening because I think it's so easy to just dismiss it.
Mm-hmm.
To just say, oh, Daphne is mad, Simon is mad.
Mm-hmm.
But the sound design here is doing some incredibly heavy lifting.
It's sonic warfare. That's what it is. You've got Daphne in the drawing room, and she is not just playing the piano, she is attacking it.
It's Beethoven, I think. But she's just hammering the keys. It's aggressive.
It's totally aggressive. And notice how she deliberately leaves the French doors open. That's not an accident.
No.
That is a tactical choice. She is broadcasting her presence. She's saying, I am here. I am taking up space, and I am absolutely furious.
And Simon's response isn't to, come inside or even to just close the door.
Yeah.
He goes out on the lawn with a shotgun.
To shoot pigeons. But if you listen to the audio mix in that scene, it's brilliant. The sound editors have cranked the volume on those gunshots. They just cut through that piano melody like whip cracks.
Yeah.
And it creates this horrible discordant rhythm of, musical phrase, gunshot, musical phrase, gunshot.
It's a conversation without a single word being spoken.
Mm.
Simon is basically just screaming, I could be louder than you.
Exactly. And it's so petty, but it's also deeply tragic. They're weaponizing their leisure time. The things they do for pleasure are now implements of war.
And it highlights that physical separation that really defines the entire episode. He's outside, in the wild, exerting destruction. And she's inside, in the domestic sphere, exerting creation music. But she's doing it with such violence.
And it sets the stakes for their ultimatum so perfectly, because we have to remember the ticking clock that's underneath all of this. This isn't just a simple lover's tiff.
No, it feels like a legal negotiation at this point.
It is a contractual negotiation. The whole marriage is in a state of suspended animation, and the terms are brutally clear. They are waiting to find out if Daphne is pregnant.
Right.
If she is, Simon stays. He'll do his duty, and we're going to talk a lot about that word duty today, but they will live completely separate lives.
Which, the way he frames it, just sounds like a prison sentence.
It is. But if she's not pregnant, they separate entirely. The marriage is over. So every single interaction you see in this episode is happening under the guillotine of a biological clock.
And while they're waging this internal Cold War inside the estate, the world outside is literally melting down. We have to talk about the Featheringtons.
Ah, the B-plot, which is really a dark mirror to what's happening with the Bridgertons.
It really is. Lady Whistledown has dropped the bomb. Everyone knows that Marina Thompson is pregnant. And watching the social fallout of that, it made me physically uncomfortable to watch.
It should. This is where the show really drops that fantasy element and shows you the teeth, the sharp teeth of the Regency social order.
Yeah.
We often talk about the Ton as this, glittery party scene with lovely dresses. But here you see it for what it is, a policing mechanism.
The cut.
The cut, which is a form of social necrosis. It's death. When the Featheringtons walk into the Queen's luncheon, the room doesn't just go quiet. It's
Yeah.
like the air is sucked out of the space.
And then they're explicitly asked to leave. It's not subtle in the slightest.
And we really need to contextualize what that means for you, the listener.
Mm.
Being cut in this era wasn't just about, having your feelings hurt. It was financial ruin.
Right. It had real-world consequences.
Absolutely. Your social credit was your actual credit. If you are cut by the ton, the shopkeepers, they stop extending you lines of credit. You cannot marry off your daughters, which means you have no way to secure the family's future wealth or position.
So when we see Lady Featherington trying to just brave that storm, she's not just trying to save face. She's fighting off bankruptcy.
Precisely. It's an existential threat to their entire family. And that contrast is just fascinating, isn't it? You have Daphne and Simon miserable in their opulent castle, protected by their immense wealth and status, but they're dealing with this profound emotional poverty.
Yeah.
And then you have the Featheringtons on the absolute brink of actual, tangible ruin.
But this disaster, this public humiliation, it actually gives Daphne one of her biggest character moments of the whole season.
The chaperone moment.
Yes. Colin wants to see Marina. And everyone, Anthony, his mother, the whole family is telling him no. They're trying to protect him from the contagion of the scandal.
Mm-hmm.
And Daphne just steps in.
And this is the moment. This is the moment Daphne graduates from being the diamond of the season to being the Duchess.
She pulls rank. She absolutely pulls rank on her older brother.
She does. She effectively outranked her mother and Anthony in this scene. She just says, I will take him. And it's a power move, but it's a benevolent one. She is using the literal shield of her new title, the Duchess of Hastings, to walk directly into the radioactive zone of the Featherington house.
It shows just how far she's come. She is not the naive girl from episode 1 anymore.
Not at all.
She understands the game now. She knows that her presence, her status, can sanitize the scandal just enough to let Colin get the closure he needs.
It's also, I think, a reflection of her own disillusionment, She knows that love isn't the fairy tale she thought it was. She sees the messiness of it all now. And by helping Colin, she's trying to navigate a situation that her mother and the rest of society just want to pretend doesn't exist.
Which is such a perfect segue into the mythology of it all.
Yeah.
Because Colin,
Poor Colin.
poor, sweet, misguided Colin.
He still thinks he's living in a grand romance novel. He actually compares himself and Marina to Hero and Leander.
The Hero and Leander reference. This is one of my absolute favorite little Easter eggs in the script.
Yeah.
Because it is such a devastating self-own by Colin, and he has absolutely no idea.
Okay, so break that down for us, because I think most people hear Greek myth and they just immediately assume epic romance. That's the go-to.
Right. And that's what Colin thinks he's saying. He thinks he's saying, our love is so powerful, I would swim oceans to get to you. But if you actually know the myth, whether you read Musaeus or Ovid, you can pick your source. It's a horror story. So, Leander swims the Hellespont every night to see his love, Hero, and she guides him with a lamp she lights in a tower.
Correct. And that works for a while. But the core of the myth isn't about the swimming. It's about the drowning. That's the point. One night, a storm blows the light out. Leander gets lost in the dark. He can't find his way, and he drowns.
Oh, wow.
And when Hero sees his corpse washed up on the rocks the next morning, she throws herself from the tower to die with him. It is a tragedy, full stop.
So when Colin makes this comparison, Daphne just shuts him down immediately.
She has to. She's the only one in that room who seems to have actually read the book. The writers are using this moment to just scream at the audience.
Yeah.
They're telling us Colin is swimming toward a dead end. He's in love with the struggle. He's in love with the idea of being a romantic savior. But he's completely blind to the reality of the situation, which is that the light has already gone out. Marina does not love him.
It's just a tragedy of miscommunication, which really, oceans apart, seems to be the theme of the hour. That phrase.
Yeah.
It's not just the title of the episode, is it?
No, it's the diagnostic line. It's the thesis statement. Daphne says it to Simon later in the episode. She says, you have no idea what it is like to be in a room with someone you cannot live without, and yet still feel as though you are oceans apart.
And that just hits so hard, because physically, they are right there. They're sharing a carriage. They're sharing a dinner table. They're sleeping in the same house.
But the proximity actually makes the distance worse. It's like the Tantalus effect, another Greek myth for you.
Right.
Being close enough to see and touch the thing you want most, but never, ever being able to grasp it. Simon is withholding himself because of his vow. Daphne is withholding herself because of her pride and her hurt. They are oceans apart, not because of geography, but because of the secrets and the trauma that they just refuse to metabolize.
And speaking of that trauma, we really have to get into why Simon is doing this. Because I was looking back at the reaction threads and forums when this episode first aired, and the fans. Well, the fans were deeply frustrated with it.
Oh, the daddy issues discourse. It was a whole thing.
It was everywhere. The general sentiment was, you're really foregoing all this happiness because your father, who is dead, made you unhappy. To a modern audience, that logic feels, well, it feels insane.
It feels incredibly immature, but I think we have to try and look at it through the lens of the character's psychology, not just through modern therapy speak.
Okay.
For Simon, that vow he made to his father to let the Hastings line die with him is the only real power he has ever had in his entire life.
It's his one act of rebellion.
It's his whole identity. If he gives that up, if he has a child and an heir, he feels like he has lost the war against his abuser. In his mind, he thinks he's winning by letting the line die.
Right.
What he doesn't see, and what Daphne is desperately trying to show him, is that by withholding love and by clinging to this hatred, he is becoming the very man he despises.
He's inflicting the exact same kind of emotional pain on Daphne that his father inflicted on him. He's continuing the cycle.
Exactly, and that is the central tragedy of episode 7. It's the show's realization, and our realization, that love is not a magic wand. You know, we're so conditioned by romance tropes to believe that the right woman can come along and fix the broken ring.
A whole Beauty and the Beast model.
Yes, but Bridgerton looks at that model and says, actually, no. Real, deep-seated trauma is stubborn. Simon isn't magically healed just because Daphne is wonderful and loves him. He is still broken, and that brokenness is what drives the entire plot of this episode.
And that brokenness, it extends to the way they communicate. Or, maybe more accurately, the way they don't communicate. It's interesting you used the word withholding earlier, because that really feels like the primary verb for everyone in this episode.
It is the operating principle. Daphne withholds her warmth and affection. Simon withholds any real explanation for his pain. The Ton withholds their approval from the Featheringtons. And this total lack of transparency, it leads to some of the most poignant scenes, particularly the one between Daphne and Marina.
I really want to pause on this scene, because amidst all the high drama and the grand tragedy of the Bridgerton house, Daphne's visit to Marina felt incredibly quiet and grounded.
Yes.
We see Marina alone in her room. She's brewing some tea. But it's very clear this is not just a casual afternoon cuppa.
Far from it.
Yeah.
This is a moment where the show really trusts the audience to pick up on the subtext. Many outlets, like Screen Rant, highlighted this in their breakdowns at the time. Marina is brewing a very specific herbal concoction.
Right.
And the implication is incredibly heavy. She's attempting to brew an abortifacient, or at least some kind of dangerous herbal remedy that she believes might solve her problem.
That one detail just changes the entire temperature of the scene. It's no longer a girl who is just sad about a breakup. This is a woman in desperate physical danger.
It's about survival. And Daphne, to her immense credit, doesn't recoil. She walks in, she smells the herbs on the air, she sees the desperation in Marina's eyes, and she does not judge. And this is a massive shift from the Daphne we saw earlier in the season, who was judging loose women or was so easily scandalized by gossip. She looks at Marina and she sees a mirror.
That's the key, isn't it? The mirror. Because Daphne followed all the rules. She was the diamond. She married the Duke. She did everything right. And Marina broke all the rules. She got pregnant out of wedlock. She did everything wrong.
And yet they are both trapped. They're both miserable. And Daphne has this dawning realization that the reward for following the rules is just a gilded cage, while the punishment for Marina is social death. But that feeling of being trapped by your own biology and by the decisions of men is identical.
It's sort of powerful moment of female solidarity. Daphne asks about the baby's father, not to gather more gossip, but to truly understand. And when she realizes Marina didn't try to trap Colin out of malice, but out of this primal need to survive.
Yeah. It changes everything for Daphne. She sees that Marina actually loved George, the soldier. She recognizes that real love. She realizes that Marina was just trying to secure a life for her child in the same way Daphne is trying to secure a life for her potential child.
Right.
It's the moment Daphne really stops being a debutante and starts being a woman who understands the harsh, brutal economics of the world they live in.
And she offers to help.
Yeah.
She uses that Duchess power again to try and find George's regiment. It's so proactive.
Yeah.
But even with all of this newfound maturity and power, she can't solve her own problem.
No.
Which brings us, inevitably, to the climax of the episode. the opera.
The opera sequence is just a masterclass in building tension. Everything in the episode has been building to this single moment, that biological clock we talked about at the very beginning.
Yeah.
It strikes midnight right here.
They're sitting in the box. The music is swelling on stage. They're performing the role of the happy couple for the public, but privately you can just see they're terrified.
Yeah.
And then Daphne feels it.
She gets her period. And the way the director, Sharif Folkson, films this is just so crucial. We don't just get a sad look on her face. We see her physically rush out. We see the reality of it. And then we cut to her, alone in her room. And she is just sobbing.
And this is where the big fan debate comes in. Because we see Simon, still in his formal wear, standing in a separate room. He looks completely devastated. And there was a huge discussion on Reddit about the sound design here. The question was, can he hear her crying?
And if you look at the layout of these grand houses, and more importantly, if you listen very closely to the audio mix, the answer is almost certainly yes.
Yeah, you can hear it.
You can. The sound of her weeping just bleeds into his space. It's faint, but it's there.
That is just heartbreaking because if he can hear her, he knows. He knows she isn't pregnant. He knows their deal is over.
More than that, he knows she is in profound pain. And the old Simon, or maybe the reformed Simon we all wanted him to be, would rush into that room and comfort her, regardless of the ultimatum.
But he doesn't.
He doesn't. He stays in his box. He stays in his separate room. He allows that physical wall between them to define their relationship. He lets her cry alone.
It does confirm that he's hurting too, though. I think it's easy to paint Simon as the villain in this episode, but the show is very clear that he is also heartbroken. Deep down, he wants the baby. He wants the happiness.
Yeah.
But the vow.
The vow is his religion at this point. Breaking it would feel like a sacrilege against his own trauma. So he just stands there with tears in his own eyes, listening to his wife cry, and does absolutely nothing. It is the ultimate manifestation of being oceans apart.
And then the rain starts.
Yeah.
We cannot talk about this ending without talking about the weather.
The pathetic fallacy, a classic.
Yeah.
The weather reflecting the internal state of the characters.
It's such a well-worn trope, isn't it? The kiss in the rain, we've seen it a million times in The Notebook, Spider-Man, every romantic comedy ever made.
Right.
The heavens open up, the couple gets soaked, and in that moment, they realize they're meant to be together.
But Bridgerton completely inverts it here. The rain isn't romantic. It's desolate. It's washing away the hope of the pregnancy. It's cold and miserable. It drives everyone indoors into their separate silos.
It's the washing away of the future they could have had.
It's such a clever and brutal subversion of a visual cliche. It tells you without a doubt that the fantasy is over.
That visual storytelling is something I really want to dig into more deeply. We mentioned the sound earlier, but the whole look of this episode, and the show in general, is so specific. So let's talk about the costumes.
Oh, the costumes are their own complete language. And there's a fascinating thesis by a researcher named Matthew that breaks down the color theory of the show. It's not just random pretty dresses, it's all coded.
So let's start with the Bridgertons. We almost always see them in that very specific shade of blue.
The Bridgerton blue. It's a very particular shade, think Wedgwood china or a Tiffany box. And it's usually combined with pale whites and silvers.
It just looks expensive. It whispers money.
That's precisely the point. It represents old money. It's refined, it's understated, it's established. Daphne, especially in this episode as a duchess, is dressed in these pale satins and silks that are incredibly impractical.
Right.
They suggest a life where you never, ever encounter dirt or grime. It shows her elevation, her status.
And then you contrast that with the Featheringtons.
The Versace family, as the show's costume designers, Ellen Mirojnick and John Glazer have called them.
I love that description. It's so perfect.
It is. They wear acid yellow, lime green, bright, almost garish orange. These are citrus colors. And in the context of the era, these dyes would have been newer, harsher, maybe even seen as a bit vulgar.
It screams no money.
It screams desperation. It's, look at me, I have arrived. It's loud where the Bridgerton palette is quiet.
And the symbols they wear are different, too. I honestly didn't even notice this until I read the deep dive notes, but the Featheringtons are always covered in butterflies.
Yes. And butterflies are a classic symbol of metamorphosis, of social climbing. They're trying to change their station. They're also a bit flighty, a bit fragile.
And the Bridgertons wear bees.
The bee. Now, obviously, there is a very specific narrative reason for the bee related to the Bridgerton patriarch's death. But symbolically, bees represent the hive.
Community.
Community, industry, loyalty, they protect the queen. The Bridgertons are the establishment. They are the hive that the butterflies are so desperately trying to get into.
And then there's Simon. He doesn't wear the Bridgerton blue, and he certainly doesn't wear the Featherington yellow.
No, Simon is the outlier. He wears deep reds and blacks, the colors of passion, of danger, of royalty, and also of mourning. He is visually signaling to us that he doesn't fit into either the old money establishment or the new money desperate class. He is a rogue element.
There was also a really cool point in that same thesis about the use of lighting, specifically what they call noir lighting.
Yes, the chiaroscuro. If you start looking for it, you see it everywhere, especially with the male characters. Whenever Anthony or Simon are wrestling with their duty, the lighting changes dramatically.
How so?
The showrunners use high contrast between light and dark, but more specifically, they often cast shadows that look like grids or bars.
Like prison bars.
Exactly. When Simon is in his study thinking about his father, or when Anthony is burdened by the duties of the Viscountcy, the light coming through the windows will often cast these bar-like shadows across their faces or their bodies. It's a visual way of showing their entrapment.
That is so subtle, but so incredibly effective. It creates this subconscious feeling of claustrophobia.
Which is deeply ironic given the vast size of their estates and their immense privilege. They are powerful men, but they are prisoners of their own obligations and traumas.
Now, whenever we talk about the incredible look of Bridgerton, the accuracy police usually come out of the woodwork. That dress color didn't exist. They wouldn't wear their hair like that.
And to those people, I always say, you are completely missing the point.
Right. Ellen Mirajnik, the costume designer, has been so open about this. She has said in interviews, this is not a documentary.
She calls it aspirational history. It's a fantasy Regency. They intentionally scooped the necklines lower to make it feel sexier and more modern. They deliberately brightened the color palette to Technicolor levels so it would pop on our 4K screens.
If they had used historically accurate muslin dresses and bonnets, it would look like a BBC Jane Austen adaptation from the 1990s.
Exactly. And the creators, Shonda Rhimes and Chris Van Dusen, were very clear from the beginning. They wanted to tell a modern love story that just happened to be set in period dress. The diversity in the casting, Queen Charlotte as a black woman, isn't just a casting choice, it's an act of world building. It's asking, what if?
It creates a universe that feels immediate to us. And the music does the exact same thing. We have to talk about the score in this episode.
The Vitamin String Quartet covers are the most famous part of the soundtrack, of course. And hearing a very recognizable pop song on a violin, it just bridges that historical gap for the viewer.
It translates the emotion instantly.
It does. If they played a period-accurate minuet, we would feel detached, like we were in a museum. But when you hear a modern song about heartbreak, you instantly understand the vibe of the scene.
But it's the original score by Chris Bowers that's doing something really specific in episode 7. There's a track on the soundtrack, actually, called Miserable Together, Happy Apart.
I mean, what a brutal title, and it perfectly encapsulates the ambiguity of this whole episode. Bowers has spoken about how the main musical theme for Simon and Daphne evolves throughout the season.
Right.
It starts out romantic, it becomes passionate, but in this episode, the melody becomes unresolved. It just wanders. It doesn't give you the satisfaction of landing on a major chord resolution.
Just leaves you hanging, just like the characters are.
It creates this sonic limbo. You're waiting for the beat to drop or for the melody to resolve itself, and it just floats. It perfectly mirrors their state of suspended animation.
This feeling of limbo brings us right back to the audience reaction. Because let me tell you, people were practically screaming at their screams during this episode.
The frustration was palpable.
Yeah.
And I think very valid.
We looked at some YouTube reaction transcripts from back then, and the recurring theme is so simple. Just get over it, Simon.
It's that collision of our modern understanding of psychology with this period depiction of trauma. One fan comment I saw really nailed it. It said something like, you're foregoing happiness because your father made you unhappy, and you're going to do that by, in turn, being a shitty father.
Wow. Yeah, that points out the central hypocrisy, doesn't it? Simon thinks he's breaking the cycle of abuse.
But he's actually just perpetuating it in a different way. He is so obsessed with the dead father that he is completely neglecting the living wife. It's a profound and tragic irony. And fans on Reddit were so quick to point out that the communication in this marriage is just, it's toxic.
Oh, completely toxic.
Yeah.
They aren't talking to each other. They are playing a game of 4D chess with their feelings.
The piano playing, the pigeon shooting, the ultimatum, the separate bedrooms. These are all games, and the audience sees this and just wants to scream, just talk to each other.
Right.
But they can't. because talking would require a level of vulnerability that Simon has built a fortress around just to survive his childhood.
The fans also really latched onto that ending. The arrival of Daphne's period felt, to many, like a death. Even though she didn't necessarily want to be forced into motherhood just to save her marriage, that moment of bleeding signifies a loss.
It signifies the death of the hope that things could just magically work out. It forces both of them to confront the brutal reality. The magic didn't save them. The fantasy is over. Now what?
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, we have to ask the big question. What is the emotional residue that this episode leaves us with? What's the core question?
For me, I think it raises a really fundamental question about relationships in general. Can a marriage actually survive when it is built on a foundation of secrets and ultimatums?
And evidence from episode 7 would suggest probably not.
Or at the very least, not without serious casualties. The episode is also just a profound exploration of that theme of duty versus desire.
That theme is woven into every single plot line.
Look at the scorecard. Simon chooses his duty to his vow over his desire for Daphne. The result: absolute misery. Anthony chooses his duty to the family name over his desire for Sienna, the opera singer. The result: complete heartbreak. Colin tries to mix his sense of duty and honor with his romantic desire for Marina, and he gets publicly humiliated.
The show is punishing all of them for trying to navigate this.
I think the show is telling us that in this particular society, you simply cannot have it both ways. If you try to live strictly by the rules, you end up miserable. And if you try to break them, you end up ruined. There's no winning path.
And for the women specifically, it just highlights their profound lack of agency in all of this.
That is the female experience thread that we've been tracking. You have Marina, who is trying to hack the system just to survive. Then you have Daphne, who is realizing the system completely lied to her about how marriage and love and even reproduction actually work.
They're both just navigating a minefield completely blindfolded.
They are.
It's a bleak assessment, but it makes the stakes for the finale incredibly high. We now know for certain that love is not going to be enough to fix everything.
We've moved from the fairy tale to the novel. We are in the real world now, and the real world has rain and silence and consequences.
It's a hard watch, this episode, but it's a necessary one. You can't have the redemption without the fall.
And this was, without a doubt, the fall.
Well, on that cheerful note, I think we have successfully dissected the corpse of the honeymoon phase.
We certainly have. And we found a lot of fascinating, if tragic, pathology inside.
That was today's deep dive. Same story, new layers. This is Pink Blade.